Hello and welcome back to the Erich Show. Happy New Year to everyone. It feels like it's been forever since we've caught up and had a good old chat on what's the latest goings on in cyber security. So without further ado, can I remember how to operate this thing? I'll preface this with this. Today's episode might be about average. And the reason for that is that IT issued me with a new laptop and all the permissions are wrong. So I can't screen share at the moment. So I'm going to have to rely on Mr. Unreliable to do that for me. And the buttons are everywhere in the wrong places. But having said that, I am a true professional. I will keep on going. I will not disappoint. This will be the best minutes of your life.
Welcome to the Erich Show, featuring your hosts, Javad Malik and Erich Krohn. Timely topics, poorly presented.
And let's welcome to the screen the man who every year says new year, new me, and still remains the same awful self. Erich Krohn, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, but I'm not saying that this year. It's a new year, same old me. You get the same old from me. So
it's not even the same. It's a deteriorating you.
You know, I got to tell you, something that I love about this is whenever you start this show, you always look surprised that the camera's on after the countdown. And I mean, you control that, which is the irony that you're surprised that there it is every time.
It's like, wow, is this thing on?
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like the eye thing you do at the end when you're making sure that we went off. Y'all watch for that at the end of this.
No, do not watch for that. This is really bad.
No, it is. This has been an interesting year. You know, it's been busy since we were last on here. I went to CES, the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, and saw a lot of very interesting things there, asked some security questions like I did last year, and was left wholly disappointed like I was last year.
A bit like your father and you every year.
That's just not nice. No, it was interesting. There were some minor changes this year, though. Oh, that's a lovely mug.
Yes, you gave it to me.
There were some interesting changes this year. One of them being they actually had a cybersecurity session, which was, I believe, the first one that CES has actually ever done, which was kind of refreshing. It had Jen Easterly. She's the CISA for the director for CISA, which is a great organization. Honestly, I think it is one of those better government organizations. They are really trying and doing some things to help people out. And then George Kurtz, the CEO for CrowdStrike, was on there too. And I thought that it was a little bit refreshing that they had these people there in this show, given how things are evolving. And, you know, we're making everything smart these days. And the last thing a lot of these vendors think about is cybersecurity. So I'm glad to see that kind of popping up there.
You're right. It's super important. And I think we were talking about this the other day. It's like you go to buy any device nowadays and it's smart. It's internet enabled.
Yeah.
So you look at it and you think, well, how long is this thing going to last me? So you go to buy a car and you think, well, it's going to last me 10 years at least. But then you flip it around and say, well, okay, how long are you going to actually be providing software updates on this purchase? And it's going to be like 3 years, 5 years if you're really lucky. So you know it becomes a really interesting trade-off for things like, you know, it's almost as if manufacturers want you to refresh your devices every couple of years.
Yeah, you know, you're right, and that's one of the questions I asked a lot of these vendors, right? So I talked to the people at Stellantis, which are over like Dodge, Jeep, Peugeot, Vauxhall. One of your homeland favorites.
Is it?
Yeah, that falls under Stellantis too.
Oh.
Heard all about them. Heard all about them from Top Gear and and how wonderful they are. Anyways, you know, I was talking to them and I started asking them some questions because I was there for the rollout of the new Peugeot concept car. which is really cool, but it's fully autonomous. Like at one point, it'll even tuck in the steering wheel and gives you this, big display for infotainment, and you can watch shows while it's driving you down the road. And I started asking, I said, all these things are now drive by wire. Your steering is by wire, your brakes, all that stuff. And it's an OTA, over the air capable updated vehicle. These things are connected all over. So obviously we're going to find some security flaws down the road. But when we do, how long are you supporting this? And I mentioned to them that, if you think about 20 years, it seems like a long time when you think about it. But right now, that's a 2003 car on the road. And there's a lot of 2003 cars still on the road. So at what point do we, I talked to a gentleman from Tesla while I was actually waiting for that and started asking some of these questions. And he was actually like, I hadn't really thought about that. Because it feels like 20 years is a long time, but somebody's going to have to support these things.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get a good answer from anybody. Stellantis swears they're going to get back with me. I even asked this of John Deere, who had their giant autonomous tractors there. And I said, I'm going to throw on my tinfoil hat here, but let's say if I'm a bad actor from a nation state, I get a hold of one of these tractors that's doing the pesticides or spraying out the fertilizers and stuff. If I muck with that, I can kill 10,000 acres, in a couple of days. If I'm a bad actor and I want to start causing problems like that, right? Or I can turn them into the cow pen and run over all the cattle. I mean, there's all these like crazy things that I can think of that you could do with this, but it's a pretty significant thing. And I asked the guy, I said, there's a lot of like 1946 John Deere still running around in fields out there. We're talking about a multi-million-dollar tractor here. How long do you support it? And what are your cybersecurity, thoughts on this or programs? And all I could really get from him is we are following the industry best practice, which I thought was interesting, given John Deere is kind of like leading the industry best practices and a lot of things. I thought that was a pretty weak response.
Oh, well, it's, it's a bit like how every day, you finish off the work and, you sign off, and then one of your kids comes up and they hand you a sign saying, at least you tried. So, that's what best practice is all about.
Is this the E for effort sort of thing?
Yeah, exactly. Go on, bring up the first story, Eric. You're in control today.
Well, what? Oh, I have to share the screen now? Okay.
Yes.
All right, fine. I'll do the work. Yeah, the Guardian got hit by the ransomware. What a shocker. Ransomware. It's still happening.
Yeah, ransomware is everywhere. It keeps on happening.
The gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah, exactly. So, hello, Eddie. Good morning to you too.
Eddie.
The Guardian was there, and what was interesting, the website didn't go down. Their main systems didn't go down like that, the publishing side. But on the other side, their internal systems were impacted, and all of their staff details got compromised. Like it sounds like all of their HR files, like their addresses, bank accounts, salaries, identity documents such as passports, etc. And then you think, wow, okay, this is bad in any organization. But when you're dealing with journalists who are frequently targeted anyway by nation states, when they're doing some coverage that is a bit close to the bone or whatever, this becomes like really quite significant for those individuals impacted.
Yeah, we've talked about this a little bit. We've touched on it in the past with journalists. But if you look at things like that Pegasus phone malware that was out there, and that's a huge thing that targeted journalists to the point that Amnesty International actually has a program for journalists to send their phones to them, and they will identify and remove if Pegasus malware is on those phones, which is a spy malware, because these folks are targeted so much. So then you go out and you dump all of their real and sensitive information, including passport stuff. You give that to some bad actors. My understanding is they're trying to sell it. That's just not a good feeling. That's not a good look either, unfortunately.
No, not a good look at all. Not a good look at all. And LinkedIn user is professing their love for John Deere but then follows it up with saying, but not a good idea.
Now, I'm with you too. I do like John Deere for some things. Now, they've been the target of a lot of issues, actually, if you think about it, with their right to repair policies, where you buy this multi-million-dollar tractor and you can't work on it. They say that you lease the software, so you're not allowed to do anything with that. And that's been an ongoing issue with John Deere for a long time. Now, I happen to own a very small John Deere tractor with none of that crap on it, so I don't have to worry about it too much. But ultimately, I mean, yeah, it's interesting to say the least.
Well,
so, all right, let's check out the next story here. Now, I see something feels common about this, Javad. I don't. Is it because it's another ransomware attack?
This is Rich, isn't it? It's the Guardian reporting a ransomware attack on the Royal Mail. So
that's what it is. Okay, I see it now. Yeah, it is. It's the Guardian reporting on a ransomware attack. Huh, the irony. Yeah, Pegasus is still huge. Yeah, newer version. I mean, to step back there to Jonathan's point, I mean, Pegasus it's not even like hackers made this necessarily. It's legitimate Israeli organization that sells it for the whole purpose of spying, quite honestly, to other nation states and stuff. And yeah, they're still developing it. So anyway, back to the Royal Mail here.
Yes.
Ransomware attackers threatened to publish stolen data, and they've been asking people not to ship stuff overseas now.
Yeah, so Royal Mail has actually asked us over here, say, don't post any parcels overseas, because there's been a bunch of issues. There was a bit of a strike and then they got hit by ransomware. So I assume there's been a massive backlog from the strike, and then the ransomware means systems are just whatever. So it's one of those things that has just compounded further and further. So, ransomware is causing a lot of havoc. So the thing is, now there's people speculate, and it's pure speculation at the moment, that this could be Russian sponsored or encouraged attacks. And it could be because Royal Mail is part of the critical national infrastructure. It's a very visible target. So and it's quite disruptive. So it's interesting to see how this will pan out.
Yeah. Oh, hey. All right. Yeah. Met at Convene. We were just at a conference here in Clearwater, and so hi, Christian. It's nice to see you again. Thanks for being a friend of the show. Obviously. Yeah. So with ransomware, it's one of these things that, like I mentioned earlier, it just keeps on giving, and it's hitting. It doesn't matter who you are. And this is the interesting thing. Like when we see these stories, we see them from every corner of industry, right? From manufacturing to, we've even seen like small stores hit by this. It doesn't really matter. I've heard of individuals hit by ransomware at home. It's something that is a considerable problem. And the interesting thing is the way it usually spreads, as we know, is phishing. Right. We know that the Guardian one was email phishing. Still, the simplest way to get stuff in is phishing people. And I'm not trying to sound like a commercial here, but it's kind of why we do what we do, because we need to remind people of that. Now, here's a question for you. You said that they asked you not to send stuff overseas. Does that mean like literally overseas, or are they talking about not within the rest of Europe? Because I know you guys were part of something and then you exited it or something to that. Did that impact anything? I mean, seriously though, are they talking?
So
are they talking overseas?
It's just convenient now. Now, if you live in the continent of Europe and you want to come over to the UK, well, good luck trying to spend more than 90 days here or trying to get a work visa. It's like you were here taking all of our jobs, apparently. So,
well,
and now that we've exited, now there's 0% unemployment in the UK. So it's worked really well.
Oh, I'm sure it's fixed everything.
Yeah.
But are they saying like don't send within Europe? Are they saying like sending over here to China?
Overseas. I mean, Europe is, I believe, considered overseas.
Is it really?
It's over the sea. So
You are on an island, right? So
yes, we are on an
yeah.
island. So everything technically is overseas. When even Ireland is over the sea line.
All right. Well, let's check the next one here. And this kind of goes back to a post that I made out there.
Oh,
Adrian, what's
thank
going
you,
on, man?
Adrian. I know you're talking about me. You accidentally put an S at the end, but thank you. Appreciate you. Appreciate
Yeah,
you.
Adrian. All right. Okay. So this goes back to a post that I made on like Twitter and LinkedIn, where it occurred to me that whenever we see an outage, like we had this big FAA outage here in the US last week, and it shut down all kinds of flights everywhere. Like it was another nightmare of air travel here. And, one of the first things I started hearing people say was it a hack? Was it a hack? It must have been a hack, right? Probably ransomware. We seem to be, at least in a lot of the circles I'm in, we seem to default now to, oh, it was some sort of a hack instead of some sort of a system failure. In this case, they say that somebody replaced a file, it blew up a database or whatever. But we always seem to have that mentality now, at least a lot of the people I know. Was that one of the first things you thought of or think of when you see something like this these days?
No, for old legacy organizations that have been around for like 50 years, 100 years, my mind always goes to legacy systems, just something eventually broke, or that one developer that was maintaining the code base retired or something. It's far too frequent. And the other thing is, now organizations are almost completely reliant on the digital technology systems. So the backup processes that we had in place are no longer there. And it reminds me of a conversation I had with my dad. And I asked him, I said, like, oh, back in the day, when you were young, you never used to lock your house, like doors would always be open. And he was like, yeah. And like in the summer when it got hot, we'd move to a cooler place and like leave the house for a few months and what have you. And I said, but what if someone broke in? And he goes, there's nothing for them to take. Maybe there's like 3 pans or something, or like, or like a bed frame. He goes, literally, like you'd carry in a backpack everything you own. There's no money or
Yeah.
phones or TVs or anything of the sort. Like literally, like the most valuable thing was probably the structure of the house.
Right.
So, and I think I mentioned that because I think that's how a lot of organizations with their digital transformation has gone over the years. Like before, you could break into an organization or like, you've probably remember these sorts of things where like someone would walk in on a Wednesday and say, hey, so-and-so database has been down since last Friday and no one's really noticed. And you're like, oh, let's work to get it back up again. Nowadays, though, everything is so reliant on it that, even like a 5-minute outage is a big deal. And similarly, like there is no backup process for any of these systems. Things are just a lot more valuable now. So that's why we don't leave our houses unlocked anymore, because anyone can walk in and walk out with 10 grams worth of equipment in like 10 minutes. And the same thing with our technology systems. So I think there's just like when you see these historical companies and they have an outage, it's, pretty much down to something like that. In my opinion, that's where my mind goes first or second, maybe something along those lines.
Interesting. Yeah, my mind generally goes to, was it an attack? And maybe that's just from being so surrounded by this all the time, but that was my first thing I thought of is, oh, a system down. Now, the system that was down here, it's called the NOTAM system. If you ever take like the official drone classes here in the US, it's the part 107 to be like a drone pilot. You have to learn how to read these things. And what it does is it tells the pilots basically what the weather outlook is for the next certain amount of time. Are there thunderstorms? Are there just regular rain? Is it, all that kind of stuff. And it's put out very simply. Well, not necessarily simply, but it's a short, basically shot that tells them what to expect. And that's what went down here. Now, my understanding is they're working on a backup system already and have been, but they haven't migrated over to that. But, it seems like of all the things that I want to have faith in, it's air travel when it comes to having modern systems. And we saw over here what happened with Southwest Airlines when their system just totally imploded on itself because it's ancient, it's old. They rely on people to call in and tell them where they are instead of the system like knowing where all their pilots and crew are. I mean, that was a fiasco. And these are the things that are transporting millions of people a week all across the world. It's almost a little bit scary.
It is indeed. It is indeed. Thanks for really lifting my spirits today, Eric. I knew I was feeling too happy after the new year started, and I knew speaking to you would soon rectify that. So thank you.
Well, knowing my history of travel curses, I mean, come on
You
now.
are a curse, Eric. Come on, it's not just the travel. You are the curse.
Oh, you're hurting me. You're hurting me inside, my friend. You're hurting me.
Inside. Well, there is a lot of inside to hurt. So, there is that.
Goodness. So I see
stories.
I see you've decided not to do any more stories. Was
Oh
that your
no, I
choice?
thought that was the end of the stories, and
No.
And I got tired of looking at me in a small screen. I want to see me in a big screen. I mean, like, I'm a handsome devil, as Adrian put it. Who am I to argue?
We got a couple fun ones here. I thought this was actually quite funny. This group was trying to break into a marijuana dispensary and ended up in a diaper cleaning business instead. Apparently, they broke into the building next door. I'm just kind of wondering, like, what I would have loved to have seen the look on their face when they realized that they were in a place full of dirty diapers and baby crap and stuff instead of marijuana everywhere, right?
Wow.
Yeah. And I can see. So the marijuana businesses, at least over here, I don't know how it is over there actually with you guys, if it's been allowed or not. But over here, obviously it's been approved for medicinal purposes and in many places for recreational. And that's at the state level. Feds still say it's illegal, but the states are going, yeah, that's okay. But over here, they have these dispensaries. And one of the interesting things about these, I know somebody who's done some physical security for them as well as cyber. They deal in cash a lot because the credit card companies aren't on board with supporting something that's federally illegal. So there's a lot of cash that comes and goes from these places. And I think that's probably why they're targets a lot for these kinds of thefts. They're going for the cash that's in there. Do you have the same sort of thing over there on your side of the pond?
So I have seen a lot of these CBD oil and types of like places crop up. I don't know what their business model is like. I assume, well, we don't have the federal and state issues here, and we don't even have the EU legislations to worry about. No, thank you very much. So so I assume everything's just laundered through Her Majesty or His Majesty's Revenue and Customs, and they take their fair shakedown as it is. So yeah, that's what my understanding is. But obviously, if anyone knows better, please write to us, let us know. Otherwise, send me some money and I'll go out and do some investigative journalism for you.
Right. Okay, we got one more story. I know this is going a little bit long, but we've been gone for a while. Right?
Yeah.
I thought this was kind of funny because we see this all the time in social media, right? Those online quiz questions. And actually, I wanted to provide this. We're going to put the links to these things in the show notes, which you can go back. They'll all be updated here pretty soon. This is one of those things that I tell people all the time, like, quit answering those stupid quiz things. And this is good ammo to be able to provide to them to say, look, I told you, stop doing this crap. This is from the FTC, the U.S. Federal Trade Commission. But basically, they're pointing out that these things are used to farm your, what, Javad?
Personal information.
Password reset questions.
Yes, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah, they are though being used for, you're right, personal information, but that a lot of that can be used for password resets, right? What do they ask us? They ask us personal information to reset passwords. So go ahead.
It's a bit like astrology. People who believe in astrology or whatever, they will get, oh, here's your mini horoscope, but click here to find out everything about what's going to happen to your day, or find out which star sign you actually are meant to be. And people believe in that kind of nonsense. Oh, sorry, I don't mean to offend any of our viewers or readers, but There's all sorts of things that people believe in, and that's what's really interesting about these quizzes, that they're often really tailored to individual tastes. So find out which Marvel character you are, or what would be your superhero name, or what would be this or that, the other. And some of them are really clever because they don't even have something you submit. They'll just say, if your first name, if your mother's maiden name begins with this letter, and what have you, then this is the letter, and if it's that, this, and then post your answer below. So you don't even think that you're clicking through or giving away anything actively, but it's really easy to see what you've just done.
It is pretty interesting. I mean, they are clever. These attackers are definitely more clever than they have been in the past, and I think a lot of people underestimate what it is we're doing here.
Yeah, smarter than your average beer.
Something like that. Were you trying to do it like a...
It doesn't matter what I was trying to do. All I know is that it's time to wrap up. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We hope to see you again next week. Until then, stay secure